Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Brothers Brawl podcast. Today I have Carter here with me. How's it going, Carter?
It's going great, Blake. How are you?
I'm doing all right. I am doing all right. I'm ready to talk Baldur's Gate and Streets of New Capenna and all things MTG. So,
all right, me too.
Well, speaking of Baldur's Gate, I figured we'd start off talking about Commander Legends 2 Battle for Baldur's Gate. And Carter, I kind of wanted to get your opinion on what's your favorite card that you are looking forward to with this set?
The card that I like the most, my personal preference, although I don't know if it'll have much of an impact on the format, is Mold Folk. One of these new sacrifice enabler creatures. Are you familiar with Mold Folk?
Mold Folk. Well, let's look it up here so that way I can read it to the people out there. The fans. The ravenous fans that we happen to have. Okay, so it's another fungus. So probably they have this like fungus tribal. They have all these different sapperling fungus kind of combo things. But so Moldfolk is one of any color in a black. It's a 1/1 fungus warrior, lifelink, mold harvest, 1, sacrifice another creature, an artifact, put +1/+1 counter, and mold. That's perfect. I love that card.
Yeah. I even made sure, well, one of the things I love the most about it, it's the only fungus warrior, the first fungus warrior in MTG history, and that's, if you don't like the idea of a fungus warrior, we're just fundamentally different people.
That is an awesome card. I love it.
I have a mono black sacrifice deck. It's something I got from another YouTuber, a guy named Pauper. I think he got it from somebody else too, but I watched him play it in one of his videos. And it's a fun deck. It's a bit of a glass cannon. Like you kind of either run over your opponent pretty quickly or you slowly get killed by them. And I love it if the deck got some help and could be just a bit better in the metagame. So I'm always on the lookout for good, cheap sacrifice creatures. Mold Folk is not going to like make this deck viable or anything, but it's kind of like a worse version of Carrion Feeder, if you're familiar with that one.
Yeah. I was just going to say that really, this feels like a deck that maybe a worse backup for Carrion Feeder. You know, a copies 5 and 6 of Carrion Feeder.
Yeah. Its ability costs mana, which is too bad, but also probably what you need to do. Probably what Wizards needs to do to make sure nothing gets like broken nowadays.
Yeah.
I figure most things, most creatures probably don't have abilities that are just free in order to avoid stuff like that. Maybe I'm forgetting some recent cards, but I think that's the direction they're moving in.
Yeah.
But Moldfolk is still, I think, still an interesting option. It only costs 1 mana. It's a little versatile because it can sacrifice artifacts too, which Carrion Feeder can't do. And maybe the sacrifice deck I like, maybe there's a different version of it that's less aggro and more patient that maybe Moldfolk could slot into. I'm not sure yet, but maybe the possibility is there.
Yeah, I definitely could see that. I feel like maybe, I know there's a lot of cards that are around with blood token effects out there. I guess I don't know if they're super popular, but they're easy treasures to sacrifice that you don't really care about that much. So I could definitely see Moldfolk taking off in a slightly different direction there too.
Yeah, I suppose. I think somebody I saw talking about it online said that maybe it could even fit in like a one of in like an affinity build if you need to sacrifice a bunch of artifacts and pump it up, and like as a different way to finish out the game besides like makeshift munitions.
Yeah,
so that's interesting.
Oh, I love that. I mean, with the gaping hole that a Tog left, I know that they there's been a bunch of different ways to fill that hole. Maybe a one of Moldfolk is the way to do it.
Yeah, A Tog, another creature that famously has an ability that doesn't cost anything.
It's funny you say that. Just let me pull up when a Tog was originally printed here. Antiquities, and Carrion Feeder was Scourge. So needless to say, you're right. They don't really print the free abilities anymore.
Probably a good idea, but I suppose I wonder if you take a step back and look at it, if a lot of the really great Pauper cards are things that were like maybe not mistakes exactly, but things that like are way too powerful for like a modern standard or something like that.
Yes, absolutely. I would agree with that, especially considering the fact that they were printed at common. You know,
Yeah, that too.
I mean, let's pull open the top Pauper cards here. Yeah, Gorilla Shaman, Red Elemental Blast. Now that's an old card. Lightning
Yeah.
Bolt. Well, Makeshift New Munitions is pretty recent, but I feel like that's just an enabler card.
Yeah.
But
That's not like a crazy card by itself, I suppose.
no.
But certainly things like the Lightning Bolt and Counterspell, I guess, are pretty obvious examples of like things that are too powerful for standard nowadays, but are staples of Pauper.
Yep. That makes sense. Well, awesome.
Anyway. Oh yeah, you go ahead.
I don't know. You feel free to jump in.
I just felt like I'd gotten off track. Mold Folk, cool card, cool types, cool name, a lot of things going for it.
I agree. Well, Carter, you and I have played Dungeons and Dragons together in a couple different campaigns for probably going on, is it 5 years now?
Yeah, something like that.
What did you think about this Dungeons and Dragons set overall?
When I was focusing on I've mostly just focused on the commons of it so far because I don't really play MTG besides Pauper lately. I was interested in the taking the initiative mechanic that they introduced. Is I guess sort of a way of maybe fixing the venture into the dungeon mechanic. I find that very interesting. I think it's an interesting name, given that initiative in D&D is, I don't know how you'd say it. It's not exactly how you think you would translate that into MTG with how this works. So the naming is a little curious, but I do like the idea that it's sort of like Monarch, but for dungeons.
Yeah, I think you're right on the nail with that one. I think the actual mechanic and how it plays out within the cards is nice, that it maybe boosts dungeons, which definitely needed a little bit of help in terms of the mechanic power level. And of course, Monarch is, I mean, we're still playing plenty of Monarch cards in Pauper, even though it was printed how long ago.
Yeah.
But I 100% agree with you that the actual translation, the flavor fail, so to speak. I shouldn't say fail, that's maybe a little harsh, but the flavor didn't translate 100% into the card game. So
Yeah, it's a strange name, but that's not a huge deal.
yeah. I will say, I think from a commander standpoint, the flavor is pretty cool. I know that there's been maybe lukewarm reviews of it, but the legendaries like Elminster and Tasha and the background mechanic for Commander, I think it's pretty sweet. But what do you think about just some of these other aspects of the set?
I think the background cards are a really cool idea. What a contrast with what we were just talking about. What a really interesting, flavorful thing to add to the game. It's a nice variety. You can give a whole bunch of cards that let you choose a background, all these different combinations you can potentially try out. And you can even get to imagine now you could look at your commander and you can invent your backstory with the little card that we gave you. I think that's really cool. I don't play a lot of Commander myself. I suppose I barely played any Commander in my life, but I think that's a really cool idea, and I think I would be excited for it if I was an EDH guy.
Yeah, totally. I 100% agree. I think it maybe kind of the 180 of the initiative mechanic where it's the flavor translated really well. I mean, who knows if people will actually utilize those cards. I feel like I'm not a very spiky player when it comes to, well, any level of Magic the Gathering, any format, but I love it personally.
Yeah, me too. Do you know how this set is being received by EDH players so far? I don't have a good sense of that.
You know, I know that there's a lot of hype for the really big Elder Dragons. So they printed one of each color. And in Dungeons and Dragons, the dragons are actually more denoted by if they're metallic or color based. So traditionally in Dungeons and Dragons, and obviously this has been a little bit retconned with, there's a new Guide to Dragons book maybe in the last 2 years here that changed this a little bit. So it's not as black and white, but metallic dragons are the sort of good aligned dragons, whereas the colored dragons are sort of the evil or more neutral type of creatures. And so for the translation into Magic, there's for example a black card, and this is the black ancient dragon from this new set, Ancient Brass Dragon. It's 5 of any color, 2 black, 7/6 Elder Dragon, flying. When it deals combat damage to a player, roll a d20. Put any number of target creature cards with total mana value X or less from graveyards onto the battlefield under your control, where X is the result. So if you roll a 20, you're critical. You get to have 20 mana value of creatures onto the battlefield.
Wow.
But also considered to be a good or at least neutral aligned creature, which I think is really interesting. They like if it was a ancient black dragon, that'd be considered an evil creature within Dungeons and Dragons. So I don't know how that really translates. I mean, not that Magic is very strict on in terms of what's considered to be good and what's considered to be evil either, but
yeah,
I don't know why brass would be black aligned.
Yeah, that is a strange choice. I don't understand that. It's a heck of an ability.
It is. Yeah, and the whole set, the whole playthrough of them it's exactly the same. Where when you do combat damage with the dragon, roll a d20, do something that is equal to the number that you roll on the die. Like Copper Dragon, which is the red version, is treasure tokens. Let's see here. Silver is draw cards equal to what you roll on the d20, which is crazy.
Wow.
You could draw a fifth of your deck up to. Let's see here. Gold Dragon is create 1/1 dragon tokens, which is pretty cool.
Okay.
And then let's see here. The last one is the green one, and that is +1/+1 counters up to 2 target creatures. So you get to. So if you roll a 10, you're actually putting 20 +1/+1 counters. Wow, that's crazy.
Now let me know what you think of this. I don't know what kind of player this makes me, but I know that I am this type of player. I don't think I like it when my cards are just like straightforwardly really, really good. I guess these dragons are examples of cards that aren't really cards for me. Where I'm like, that's a bomb. That sounds, I guess, flashy, but it's almost like I don't have to work for it at all. It's just like you pay the mana for it, and all of a sudden, it's an amazingly good card. It's like, no, I wanna put stuff together and make something cool, or I wanna earn my win. But if I see something like this, it's like roll a d20 and make like a bunch of whatever, it's like, I don't know. It's like I'm inheriting wealth.
Yes, you're definitely a trust fund kid when you land the bronze dragon onto the field.
Maybe that's harsh. I don't mean to be mean.
No, I think that's fair. I think the kids would call it the face roll card, where you can literally just roll your face across the keyboard and you'd still win.
I like that.
So, I think I'm maybe a little bit more in the middle. I love the creatures that are big and flashy, but I like the idea of, instead of ancient bronze dragon, like I'm trying to think of a good example, like a 10/10 for 10. And so you'd never be able to reasonably get up to 10. So you have to find a way to cheat it onto the battlefield or, do something creative with it. So I kind of see where you're coming from, where it doesn't feel earned. So.
Yeah. Who likes to play giant creatures? What's the name for that player archetype?
Is that Battleship Magic? Is that what it's called? Where you're playing really big creatures that I think my understanding, and I'm not. What is the name of that game? StarCraft. There's a ship called a battle cruiser, and my understanding is that it's just kind of like an ancient bronze dragon. It's big, it's dumb, and it costs a lot, and so you just slam it in. And again, I've never played StarCraft, so this is probably a horrible description, but yeah.
Well, as far as we know, it's right. So that's good enough for us.
So therefore, it is canon. That's why we play Pauper. You can't. These cards don't exist, right?
Yeah. I don't think there's anything like that in Pauper, and I guess that's probably one of the reasons why I like it.
Yep.
I should give more of the set a look over, though. I've mostly been focusing on the commons, but this seems like there's some crazy stuff in here.
There absolutely is. It's just really interesting to see all of the different. I mean, they have to create, what is it, 200 new cards, essentially. Maybe that number's wrong, but 100 or more new cards, and to see where they have to go with a design space to create kind of, besides just the new base mechanics like initiative and, these die rolling pieces and background. It's really interesting to see how they design these cards, in my opinion.
Yeah. I would agree with that.
Well, why don't we transition over here? I know this is abrupt. I didn't have a good segue for it. Carter, do you have a creative segue to Streets of New Capenna?
When you were introducing the sets we were going to talk about today, and you said Baldur's Gate, Streets of New Capenna, I thought there was like some kind of tortured infrastructure joke you could make, but I can't come up with one. So,
something. My taxes go to this. Okay, that perfect transition. Nailed it. 10 out of 10. So let's talk about Streets of New Capenna. Carter, I guess just what's your general impression with Streets of New Capenna?
From an aesthetic point of view, from a flavor point of view, which I guess is usually how I start. I don't know if that's good or not. Not as much my thing as, say, Ikoria or even returning to Kamigawa. The kind of Art Deco 1920s-ish style didn't interest me as much, but I have to say it's very unique for Magic, so I appreciate that part of it. And I'm also not usually a huge fan of like tri-color cards, I suppose. I think the majority of the time I prefer playing one-color decks, maybe two-color if I'm feeling spicy, but three colors is usually not my thing.
Mm-hmm.
And given this is a tri-color set, I think that's another reason why I wasn't as interested in it. But I like that they came up with some kind of new, not guilds, but whatever they're calling the like crime families that they made up for this this new plane. And I like that they came up with new mechanics unique to each one. I think that's fun. Sort of like a remix of Ravnica in that way. So I really enjoy that part of it.
Yeah, I think they definitely went all out in terms of just being creative with the set. I'm with you there, though, in terms of flavor. Something about the 1920s aesthetic and the Art Deco didn't 100% click with me. I know that there's some of the cards that I think are just absolutely gorgeous, and I think just feel very immersive, and the set itself sometimes can feel very immersive, but other pieces of it, I just don't know. Maybe I'm too much of an old man, and I just don't see how this is a Magic set in when I see a Rolls Royce on my card.
Yeah, I get that. What do we have? I'm sure we have some cards in this set that I remember seeing. They're just like something that you'd expect in the Great Gatsby,
Mm-hmm.
but it's also on an MTG card.
Mm-hmm.
I can't think of anything right now, but there might be a couple of those. But there's a valet, which is funny, but also not something you'd ever expect to see.
Yeah. Well, what did you think in terms of, I guess, power level? Well, for lack of a better term, of this set? Did anything change in Pauper with Streets of New Capenna being released?
No, I definitely don't think so. I think, as a lot of other people have pointed out on the internet, this set didn't have as much to offer as some of the recent sets have. Nothing really ground shaking at all. Some interesting cards. At least one card that I think will show up in decks and already has started showing up in decks. But nothing like an experimental synthesizer that will show up a decent amount, or something like Deadly Dispute, which just shows up everywhere. That's fine. I don't think every set is going to have a huge impact on Pauper, and that's probably for the best.
Yeah, that's fair. It's probably maybe a lack of not knowing what's best for the format sometimes, when I'm like, oh, just give me something really cool in this, even though it probably will break the format. But
yeah, I feel you. Certainly for my pet decks, I'm like, oh man, if we could just get some card that could push us over the edge and make it a real powerhouse, but then that could easily become a problem. I suppose some of the cards in recent years that have had the biggest impact on Pauper have ended up having to be banned, like Arkham's Astrolabe or Pull from Favor. So, careful what you wish for, I suppose.
Yeah. But Carter, I just don't get it. Why couldn't ninjas be in the 1920s? Is there something wrong with that?
I'd love to see how they would draw that. If the artist would come up with that.
That'd be well, you heard it here first, folks. We're requisitioning a 1920s ninja, so there it is.
Call us if you know somebody.
Exactly. Well, Carter, just speaking of the Streets of New Capenna not really having too much of an impact on Pauper, let's talk just very briefly about, well, it doesn't have to be briefly, you can talk as long as you want, but I am going to put the Jeopardy music on. Let's talk about the Pauper metagame here. So the top decks here, and let me just pull open the list. I'm seeing Familiars is the top deck, which is essentially just an Esper or white, blue, black control, followed by Boros Aggro, or white and red. Goblins, which is really interesting. It's kind of a combo, but also an aggro deck as well, I would argue.
Oh, really?
Maybe I'm just bad at playing and I get run over by these goblins, even if they're not actually comboing off. But And those are the top three. And then there's, of course, you've got Temur mid-range, the Fairies deck, and the Elves deck. There's actually a blue-red version of the Fairies deck, not just a blue-black version. So there's quite a bit of Fairies and variety there. Burn, some of these very more traditional Pauper decks like Bogles is still around, Kilnveen is still around, that kind of a thing. As you get further down the list. But just the top three being Familiars, Red-White Aggro, and then the Goblins combo. Carter, what do you think about the Pauper metagame right now?
Well, let me start with this. Hopefully you didn't come here for expert analysis because I have my shit list and I like to name names, but whether or not the format is healthy, I'm not the one to judge. I'm sure it is. It seems like there's a good variety, and that seems nice. I mean, to start off on my shit list, it's a lot of combo decks. Combo decks are not bad. There's nothing wrong with that. It's an essential part of the game. But get that out of here.
So tell us how you really feel. No, I'm just kidding. Yeah, so not a fan of combo decks, huh? Just the play pattern.
You know what? I'm not even sure if I know combo decks well enough to get on their case like this. It's not my preferred way of playing. And sometimes I'll have these matchups where it's just like, are they gonna get it before I kill them? I suppose that's always how it goes, but it's sometimes if there's little interaction against what I'm doing, then it just seems like a race through their deck in hopes of finding the cards they need, and I'm just hitting them every turn, hoping that they aren't lucky.
Yeah.
But that might just be my experience. That doesn't always happen, I'm sure. And it's everybody has their preferences, and mine are just slightly different. So it doesn't seem like it's a huge issue, certainly. There's nothing like that Chatterstorm card, I think, that was had to get banned pretty quickly.
Was that Modern Horizons 2 or was that 1? I'm trying to remember now.
I think it was 2.
Yeah, I think it was 2 as well. But I'm not going to look it up, because I don't have the internet. Just kidding, I can look it up. MH2, you are correct. Yeah.
At least these decks aren't as oppressive as that was, obviously, because that had to get removed pretty quickly.
Yeah, very much agreed. I can't say that I'm as much of a hater on combo decks. I like to run combo decks pretty frequently. I'd be pretty hypocritical of me to be like, well, you guys can't run combo decks, but I can run combo decks. Yeah,
not everybody has to feel the way I feel. I don't mean to sound like I'm too strong on that.
Yeah, well, but I do understand what I really like is a good tier 1.5, tier 2 combo deck, right? Maybe a 50% win rate. Because, when I play combo decks, I understand that it's kind of just like you're playing poker to a certain extent. You're trying to bluff out your opponent while also just hoping that you draw the right cards. And that's not always fun, especially when they're really strong. I mean, I guess I would be a little bit nervous that Goblins is so high up it's at just shy of 10% of the meta is what I'm seeing here. I don't know if that's 100% correct, but that's a lot, right? And I get worried when combo decks get that high up, and especially when you get new cards coming out that may make it more consistent. I don't think new cards are going to make it less consistent, so there's, it's one way to go. But personally, and this is, maybe, again, maybe a little bit hypocritical on my part, but I don't like I don't like it when control is at the top of meta. I like it when aggro is leading the charge, pun intended, and maybe control is like slot 2 or 3. It makes me nervous again to have familiars at the top because I can tell you, just sitting there and having everything counterspelled, and then they mnemonic wall, and you're like, oh my gosh, and the Familiars deck isn't nearly as oppressive as like Stonehorn Dignitary. Is that the one that locks you out of?
Yeah.
It's not a lockout deck, but it's still annoying,
Yeah. You would prefer if the deck is dominant and good at stopping you from doing most everything that it can win kind of fast.
Exactly.
And so I understand when you talk about not liking control being the absolute best in the metagame, because I suppose control's thing is usually not winning quickly.
I'd rather die to a combo quickly than control slowly.
That makes a lot of sense.
But really, Carter, what it should be is just that our favorite decks are at the top of the meta and the other decks are at the bottom.
Yeah. Maybe that's what I should explain. You like playing tier 1.5 combo decks. I like playing like tier 2 kind of mid-rangey aggro decks. Like I love mono black control, which is just not very good, or certainly not very good compared to the other decks at the top of the metagame.
Yeah.
So it's going to suffer in a lot of matchups, and it's definitely going to suffer against these combo decks because it's definitely not a fast deck either. So that probably explains why some of my disdain for that. My tier 2 mid-rangey aggro decks can only go up against certain kinds of aggro decks and certain kinds of control, but it's combo I'm staring down. I probably won't do very well.
Yeah, I 100% feel that. It's with Pauper being an eternal format and also having, just some of the best cards in Magic printed at common at one point or another, it makes it hard to play those mid-range decks. Just looking at the top decks here, I'm really only seeing kind of one mid-range deck in general. So,
yeah, it feels like a lot of the top decks that are sort of mid-rangey or control-ish, I'm not sure exactly what they would be classified as, but creature-based decks like mono black control that are actually good have like super great value, I suppose. Like Fairies decks will be bouncing back Spellstutter Sprite a bunch of times and replaying that to counter your stuff, as well as using like Ninja the Deep Hours to draw cards. Or these Boros aggro decks will use like Core Skyfisher and the like to bounce like Thraben Inspector and other stuff to help you just draw cards over and over. And a deck like Mono Black Control just doesn't have the creatures necessary to make that happen, or it doesn't. It also doesn't have just some kind of repeatable value source that that seems like you need in order to be dominant in Pauper.
Yeah, that I think that's a fair assessment. I will say it's interesting when you bring up the fairies, or whether you're doing the red blue or black blue version. I there's sometimes when you play the deck, I could see where it could be mid-rangey, and then there's other times where it feels almost like a tempo bordering on control. And I know that I'm sure that can bother people being hit by just like a 2/2 flyer in the air or whatever you're getting hit with over and over again. What do you feel about when people play a more tempo style gameplay?
Frankly, I think I end up liking that. Most of my ideal form of like a Pauper win is probably winning with like small creatures, just getting through either because they're evasive or I've gotten rid of a lot of my opponent's defenses. This is not a tempo deck, but I like White Weenie a lot too, and that's all about hitting your opponents with small dudes until you can finally kill them with like a pump spell. And tempo decks or things that are at least close to temple, like fairies. As much as I hate Spellstarter Sprite and Ninja the Deep Hours with like all of my being, I do like winning kind of slowly over time with like cheap little flyers like that, and then fun utility spells. So maybe this is one thing we've talked about so far that isn't on my shit list.
Well, it's no fun if you're not just going to shit on everything. I mean, but no, I guess it is interesting that you say that, because all of the examples you bring up of things that you're okay with are the little guys getting in. You're really for the little guy, aren't you, Carter?
Yeah. We band together and we can do great things.
Exactly. I like it. I honestly, it's interesting you say that, like, Spellstutter and Ninja the Deep Hours are, something that you loathe. Whenever I play against that deck, I full disclosure, I play that deck relatively frequently because I really enjoy. I feel like it's quite a bit of a challenge to try to out-tempo your opponent. Maybe I'm just bad at playing tempo because I'm too impatient and I just need to smash things. But I feel like the piece of it that always gets me when going against it is getting my stuff countered. That just sets me off.
Yeah, isn't that the classic MTG player grievance?
Yep.
But it does feel bad.
It does. It does. That's why I need to have the counter spells, and they don't get to have the counter spells.
Yeah, exactly.
So
that's the problem with Spellstarter Sprite. It's on a creature, and then you can just bounce it back to your hand, and you can use it again.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, oh, I hate it so much.
Yeah. Yep. But, well, any other thoughts on the Pauper metagame overall?
I will say that from Streets of New Capenna, the card I hinted at earlier that like won't make a huge impact, but we'll see play, is Inspiring Overseer. And that's a card for me because it's a small white creature that draws you a card and has flying. It's one of my little dudes that I can add to my army that I like so much.
Yes, absolutely. I will say they keep printing more and more of these common little white draw card creatures, which I think is phenomenal. Like, really, what is it? Priest of the Ancient Lore? I think that's Inspiring Overseer. It's just kind of a strict upgrade to that, isn't it?
Yeah, I think it's the same thing, except it has flying.
Yeah. Let me pull it up here.
Yeah, and I love stuff like that. I think there's been at least one white weenie list that was playing this recently that got a 5-0 in a league. So whatever that's worth. I suppose one result like that doesn't mean a whole lot, but it excites me. And I'm hopeful that card can slot into that deck and do good work.
Absolutely. Well, and, it's funny. I totally forgot just not last set, but really kind of the last set. Kamigawa, Spirited Companion, another white weenie that draws you a card.
Yeah. Now you get 8 of them. 8 of them playable. And I love drawing cards. I mean, I think everybody does, but I think I like it more. I don't know if that's true. It's something I enjoy a lot. You get to flip it over a little Christmas morning multiple times in one turn with these guys. I like that.
Yes. It makes you feel like you're doing a lot. Even if you may not win, you're at least getting to do something.
Yeah, yeah. Drawing a card is always like doing something,
mm-hmm.
getting something. That feels nice.
Mm-hmm. All right.
Kind of the opposite of your spell countered.
Yes, it is the opposite of getting your spell. Yeah, I like that. I like that. Awesome. Well, Carter, any closing thoughts before we wrap up here?
I was about to complain again, but I've done that enough. I am enjoying Pauper again after being away from it for so many years, and I appreciate it. I do hope that they released all of this new Baldur's Gate set on MTGO, I don't know. Thought I heard that they might not be releasing all of it or something like that. So hopefully they reverse that decision or something. Because I'm having a good time, and we should just keep getting all the commons because those are what's legal.
Yeah, that is interesting that you mentioned that. I forgot to bring that up. It seems to be kind of a common theme that for some of these more commander sets, they don't release everything on MTGO, which is a bit of a disappointment. Especially, I mean, I don't know if it'll have a huge impact on the metagame one way or the other, but it is kind of a disappointment when you don't have the card to play with.
Yeah, and some of this interesting new stuff, like the taking the initiative mechanic, you'd want to. I really want to see how that affects the metagame. So I hope at least those common cards, make it onto MTGO.
Yeah, maybe we'll see the return of Monarch to the top of the metagame.
But, yeah, could be value, getting value over and over. That seems to be one of the key ways to win.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. All right.
And also...
go ahead. I keep trying to cut you off here.
No, it's okay. You're not cutting me off. We're just speaking at the same time. My last thought is that we should play again sometime. It's been a while.
Absolutely, yes. I will. I'll torture you with ninjas. I mean, we're going to have a great time.
It is funny. I guess I listed off these decks I hate, and then you were like, I actually play both of those.
Well, here's the thing. I do not play goblins. I don't play good combo decks, Carter. I play really bad combo decks.
That's it. Okay, that's allowed.
So. All right. Well, thanks everyone for listening to the Brothers Brawl podcast. Like, subscribe, and check out the other videos on our channel. Thanks for watching.
Thanks, everyone.